I'm here to talk about Suzaku Kururugi. Suzaku is kind of the other lead main character of Code Geass. Of course, Code Geass Lelouch, that's his show. It's very much focused on him. However, Suzaku's also kind of a lead character in his own way. The show really follows Lelouch and Suzaku's very complicated journeys and how they fight each other and they compete and they have this complicated friendship, but they also are enemies. It's very interesting, and Suzaku gets a lot of focus throughout the show to the point that he's kind of considered the other lead, although it is Lelouch's show, but Zuck's kind of the second lead of Code Geass. And what really makes Lelouch and Suzaku's rivalry so interesting is that it's not a hero versus villain situation. It's not a one. It's not a heroic, inspiring role model of a hero versus a very sneaky, over the top, mustache twirling villain. It's not like that because Lelouch isn't that traditional hero, and Suzaku's really not that villain. In fact, Lelouch is pretty much an anti-hero, and Suzaku is also pretty much an anti-hero. And it's something that's kind of fascinating about them, because as much as they compete against each other, they not only have similar goals, but they have similar types of morality. They're characters that do some questionable things in order to make their goals happen. So it's a very interesting thing where Lelouch isn't completely right and Suzaku isn't completely wrong, and there are different points in the show where you could root for Lelouch or could root for Suzaku or could understand where both are coming from, but don't necessarily think that they're both doing the right thing. And some people think that Suzaku is annoying because Suzaku kind of acts like he's morally superior to Lelouch. But I think that's a fascinating thing about his character is that although Suzaku's really playing by the rules, it's kind of an interesting thing where playing by the rules isn't necessarily the right thing, where the people in charge aren't necessarily always the people that are right, and Suzaku is technically a kind of more friendly person a lot of the time, has better socializing skills, all that stuff, but he's not necessarily any better of a person than Lelouch is, and in a lot of ways, he's getting in the way of Lelouch's progress to making the world a better place, and there's a lot of fascinating things about that. And I think that Lelouch and Suzaku have very interesting arguments and the way they compete against each other, and how much Suzaku tries to be reasonable, but when things don't really go well for him, when he loses something very important to him, he becomes very antagonistic towards Lelouch, and pretty much Lelouch and Suzaku become arch enemies. It gets very intense. Best friends becoming arch enemies. It's a great, fascinating thing that really carries the show. Their rivalry is very intense and fascinating. So Lelouch and Suzaku, very interesting competing main characters. And Suzaku is a very interesting character. A lot of people hate Suzaku, but he's a very interesting character. And yes, Suzaku does some things that could be considered not very smart, but he's still a very fascinating character. And the writing for Suzaku, that's definitely smart. That's really interesting stuff. And a lot of Code Geass is carried by Lelouch and Suzaku's complicated rivalries, so it's very interesting.